The scent of sage and rain-starved earth clung to Dust Devil Gulch as Reese Callahan reined in his horse, his gaze fixed on the unnatural stillness near his cabin. It was in the hushed quiet of his barn that he found them, two young women, identical down to the terrified look in their dark, almond-shaped eyes, huddled in the hayloft. They were Chinese, escapees from the railroad camps, their simple cotton clothes torn and stained with the grime of a desperate flight. Before he could offer more than a blanket and a canteen of water, the thunder of hooves announced the arrival of the man they were fleeing. Bartholomew Thorne, the railroad magnate who owned the town and everyone in it, sat astride a black stallion, his tailored suit a stark offense to the rugged landscape. He held two documents aloft, the ink bleeding like a fresh wound. Indentured servitude contracts, Callahan, Thorne sneered, his smile thin and cruel. My property. I have a new town ordinance, passed this morning. Any unclaimed labours are to be transferred to my silver mine. A far less pleasant assignment. He checked his gold pocket watch. You have until sundown to return what is mine. 6 hours. The unspoken threat hung heavy in the air. The mines were a death sentence. Reese looked from the contracts to the cabin where the two sisters, Mai and Lynn, now hid. Their modest inheritance from their father, a small plot of land Thorne coveted for its access to the river, was tied to their freedom. The magnate's new ordinance was a legal cage, and he was rattling the bars. With his jaw set, Reese strode toward town, the twin sisters trailing behind him like shadows. His plan was a desperate long shot, a gamble against a stacked deck. He needed to create a claim on them so undeniable that it superseded Thorne's contracts. Whispers followed their procession down the dusty main street. Inside the saloon, conversations died as Reese scanned the room. Most men looked away, unwilling to cross Thorne. Only Dr. Finch, the company doctor on Thorne's payroll, smirked from his corner table. Thorne himself sat at the bar, nursing a whiskey, the picture of smug certainty. Reese's heart hammered against his ribs. He saw no friendly faces, no one willing to risk their livelihood, or their life, by standing with him. The weight of failure pressed down on him. It was then that Mai and Lynn stepped forward, their small frames radiating a surprising strength. They moved to either side of him, their faces pale but resolute. Undress us now or we'll do it ourselves, Mai whispered, her voice a silken thread of pure steel, meant only for him. Lynn nodded in silent, fierce agreement. The shock of their words jolted Reese from his hesitation. He understood in an instant. They weren't proposing an indecency, they were demanding a spectacle. They needed to create a scandal so profound, so public, that no one could deny a union had been formed. It was the only move left on the board. Reese's chair scraped back as he rose to his full height, towering over them. He took a deep breath, his voice booming across the silent saloon. We need the justice of the peace. I'm taking 2 wives. Gasps echoed through the room. A plural marriage was unusual but not unheard of on the frontier, a loophole in the territorial laws Thorne hadn't thought to close. Gus, the shopkeeper who had been quietly nursing a beer, suddenly stood. I'll witness, he volunteered, his defiance a small, bright spark in the oppressive gloom. Clara May is still at the schoolhouse. She'll be the second. They exited the saloon under Thorne's burning glare, his carefully laid plans unraveling. The whispers that followed them spread like wildfire, ensuring that by sundown, everyone in Dust Devil Gulch would know of the rancher's desperate gambit. The justice of the peace, a balding man named Wilbur Hatch, looked up with undisguised shock as the unusual wedding party entered his office. His spectacles slipped down his nose as he took in Reese's determined expression and the identical, trail-worn young women at his side. Clara May, the school teacher, lent an air of respectability that clearly confounded him. The office window framed the setting sun, its amber light a stark reminder of the deadline. Less than an hour remained. Reese stood silent during the hasty ceremony, his responses measured and clear. As Justice Hatch pronounced them husband and wives, the door burst open to reveal Bartholomew Thorne, flanked by Dr. Finch. This fast doesn't meet legal requirements, the magnate announced. Reese's hand moved to his holster with fluid grace, causing both intruders to pause. The certificate is signed and witnessed, Reese stated flatly. The statute requires proof of consummation, Dr. Finch interjected with a smirk. As the county medical authority, I'm required to verify the marriage's completion before the contracts are voided. Gus's face reddened with indignation. That's not in any law I've ever heard of. Clara May's lips pressed into a thin line. The requirement is for witnesses to the ceremony, nothing more. Then we'll ensure every requirement is met, Reese declared, taking an arm of each of the sisters. You're all invited to witness our departure to my cabin. The walk back was an impromptu procession, with Thorne and Finch following like predators. The cabin door closed behind them with finality, leaving the crowd to murmur in the twilight. Inside, Mai immediately moved to light an oil lamp, her hand steady. They'll watch all night, she stated practically. Dr. Finch will claim we failed to uphold the marriage unless we maintain appearances until morning. Reese surveyed the modest one-room dwelling. A single bed, a table, and 2 chairs. He gestured to the bed. You two take it. I'll take the chair. Lynn unlocked a small chest her father had left in their care, counting out a small sum of money. For your trouble, she said quietly. Then she revealed a leather-bound journal filled with intricate drawings of plants and handwritten notes in Chinese. This is the real reason he wants our land. And why our father had an accident at the railroad camp. She opened the journal to a hand-drawn map of the watershed. Thorne's mine is poisoning the creek, Mai explained, her finger tracing a dark line from the mine, past their small plot of land, and downstream toward the farms. Our father was an herbalist. He was documenting the poison, proving it was killing the livestock and making the children sick. Morning light filtered through the curtains, revealing Reese sleeping upright in a chair by the door, his revolver within easy reach. A soft knock announced Clara May, serving as both ally and morning witness. Finch is on the mercantile porch, spreading rumors, she warned quietly, placing a basket of biscuits on the table. My husband was killed 3 days after he confronted Thorne with his findings, Mai explained, her voice tight with grief. Thorne offered to buy our land the day after the funeral, claiming it was worthless. The conversation was interrupted by an insistent knock. Dr. Finch's voice carried through the thin door. A medical examination is required to validate the marriage, Mrs. Callahan. Reese opened the door just enough to block the doctor's view. My wives require no examination, he stated with a quiet menace that made the physician step back. Later, Reese led Mai and Lynn along the creek bordering their property. A sickly yellow residue coated the rocks, and dead fish floated in stagnant pools. Our father taught us which plants could help, Lynn said, gesturing to herbs growing near the water. But even they are starting to die. Their conversation was halted by a figure emerging from the trees. It was an older native man with observant eyes that assessed Reese with careful neutrality. Black Owl, Mai said in greeting. A friend of our father. New husband brings new trouble, Black Owl observed, nodding toward the ridge where one of Thorne's men watched them through a spyglass. Or new strength. He led them to a hidden cave where he and their father had set up a small laboratory. Glass vials of contaminated water were labeled by date, showing a timeline of increasing pollution. Mercury and arsenic, Black Owl explained. 27 deaths in 2 years, all dismissed by Dr. Finch as frontier hardship. That afternoon, Clara May arrived with territorial law books, her meticulous mind having identified multiple violations in Thorne's operations. The ordinance Thorne used against you was drafted by him and pushed through the council last week, she revealed. Evidence won't matter without the proper authority, Reese observed. When does the circuit judge visit? 2 weeks, Clara May answered, a spark of hope in her eyes. The deadline transformed their desperate pact into organized resistance. Their first effector came after midnight. Mr. Chen, a former chemist from Thorne's refinery, clutched a portfolio that could destroy the magnet. I designed the refining process, he confessed, shame etched on his face. Thorne ordered me to dump the waste directly into the creek to cut costs. The portfolio contained written orders from Thorne himself. I resigned after the Henderson child died from drinking the water, Chen explained, his hands trembling. Thorn threatened to ruin me if I spoke out. At dawn, Gus arrived with supplies and news. Thorn has filed a formal challenge to the marriage, claiming moral turpitude, but the tide was turning. Half the town's talking about standing up to him now, Gus reported. The Hendersons blame him openly for their son's death. The public charade of their marriage continued, but in private, a genuine partnership was forming. Reese, Mai, and Lynn found a shared purpose that blurred the lines between pretense and reality. Their conversation shifted from transaction to collaboration, creating an unexpected connection. The turning point came with the collapse of 8-year-old Sarah Miller at the town well. As the child convulsed, Dr. Finch arrived with his useless tonics, diagnosing a nervous complaint virus pushed through the crowd with Mai and Lynn at her side. It's mercury poisoning, Lynn declared, kneeling to administer a mixture of charcoal and binding herbs from her father's notes. As the child's symptoms subsided, the crowd witnessed the stark contrast between Finch's incompetence and the twins' effective care. Thorn himself appeared, attempting to dismiss their actions as superstition, but his practiced smile faltered. Science speaks through evidence, Reese stated, stepping between Thorn and the women. From the crowd, Mr. Chen found his courage. I designed the containment systems Thorn never built, he declared. I calculated the poison concentrations he ordered me to ignore. The town's divisions crystallized. Gus broke the tension by announcing his store would provide clean water, hauled from a spring beyond Thorn's contamination, free of charge. Clara May then seized the moment. I've sent for the circuit judge. He arrives in 4 days. That night, Reese returned to his cabin to find the door splintered and the interior ransacked. The journal and water samples were shattered across the floor. But Black Owl appeared at dusk, having anticipated the move. From his medicine pouch, he produced the original samples their father had collected. They threaten what can be replaced, he said wisely, but forget what cannot. The resistance now faced a final, desperate race to prepare for the judge. The arrival of Judge Harlan Whitaker, a man whose authority was beyond Thorn's influence, transformed the town. He established court in the small meeting hall, and Thorn wasted no time presenting his case, attacking the validity of Reese's marriage and painting the twins as his rightful property. The ordinance exists to ensure proper management of Laboris, Thorn's lawyer argued. Mr. Callahan's desperate and vulgar measures demonstrate precisely why such regulations are necessary. Judge Whitaker remained impassive. These marriage papers appear in order, he noted dryly. When their turn came, Reese spoke. Your Honor, before addressing property, we request consideration of more urgent concerns. The contamination of the town's water supply. The judge's raised eyebrow was all the invitation they needed. Black Owl presented the labeled water samples. Mr. Chen presented Thorn's own memos, explaining in technical detail how the magnet had systematically poisoned the watershed. The Miller family provided emotional testimony about their daughter's near-death experience. Gus produced ledgers showing a spike in medicine sales correlating with refinery operations. The final blow came when Clara May presented the original territorial statutes alongside the hastily passed ordinance, highlighting its suspicious timing and clear conflict of interest. As testimony continued, the hall filled to capacity, the townspeople becoming participants in their own liberation. The second day, Judge Whitaker cut to the heart of the matter. Thorn's lawyers argued that some waste was a necessary consequence of progress. Progress built on poisoned children is no progress at all, Mai countered from her seat, her voice clear and strong. Dr. Finch's testimony crumbled under cross-examination when confronted with death certificates he had signed, attributing poisoning symptoms to natural causes. His complicity was laid bare for all to see. The judge's final questions were for Reese, Mai, and Lynn. Did you marry for convenience or commitment? He asked, his eyes sharp. Reese met his gaze. It began as a necessity, Your Honor. I could have taken payment and left them to their fate. But circumstances reveal character. Lynn completed the thought, her voice steady. Some contracts evolve into covenants, Your Honor. We began this to survive, but we found a partnership worth defending. The morning of the verdict, the meeting hall was packed. Judge Whitaker entered, his face grim. This court has reviewed extensive evidence, he began, his voice ringing with authority. The findings are disturbing on multiple counts. He systematically dismantled Thorne's defense, citing violations of territorial